Welcome to the 775 Alive podcast, your rural Nevada headquarters for decoding politics, economics, and general global shenanigans. I'm Crystal Newton, your business strategist, breaking down why Nevada's hustle is stronger than a sagebrush root in a windstorm. Here with my trusty co-host, Scott Gaborski, PhD historian, here to explain the smart lessons of history, even if we are likely to ignore them. Grab your boots for a wild ride through today's most important news.
Welcome back. Crystal and I are back down here in Vegas. Today we're down here at the Nevada Republican Club. So a big shout out to Pauline Lee and Shaden Gorai for working with us to get us here. And we're so happy to be joined today by the Congressional District 4, one of the candidates, Cody Whipple. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
We wanted to talk a little bit particularly with you because one of the things that's interesting is Congressional District 4 actually is the one district in Nevada that you're covering a large part of, 6 rural counties in the 775.
Yeah.
And then also a good portion of Las Vegas. So you have the most urban.
You're talking Las Vegas Boulevard all the way to Smith Valley, Nevada,
right.
Lake Las Vegas. So it's a very large district.
Right, and north of Tonopah and of course Lincoln County where you're from. So that bridging that sort of gap between rural and urban is something, of course, we're doing here at 775.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and give us a bit of your biography background?
Sure.
So we can get into the issues?
Cody Whipple, candidate for Nevada's 4th Congressional District. I'm a lifelong Nevadan. I say lifelong Nevadan, but that we've been here since the inception of Nevada. We were here when it was Utah territory. My children are 5th generation Nevadan. So just 25 years in rural Nevada, cattle ranching, growing up, playing these really remote local high schools and
Taking the 5-hour bus trips.
The 5, 6, 7. I mean, we went to Oahe and McDermott, and we always stayed in Winnemucca or Elko, and it was a lot of fun because it prepared me for, what was after high school and the FFA and the Boy Scouts. Lots of church activities. Those small town communities are great. Everybody. It's a tribe, right? You've got other parents looking after you. I remember Little League. I would be sitting on my mailbox, and the coach would pick me up, and we rode in the back of these old trucks with campers, no seat belts. We had a ghetto blaster. I remember Michael Jackson, Prince, and driving over to Caliente or Panaca and Pioche and playing Little League. But just the smell of gas fumes and music, and just remembering, being a club parent to my daughters and hearing about some accidents that have happened between Southern California and Las Vegas in these traveling for sports. I just remember back then being in the back of a truck and realizing later, oh my gosh, what would have happened if, there would have been an accident. But it was a great way to be raised. And so 25 years in the rural and then 25 years in urban Las Vegas, where I built a communications company, unlike nobody, it's the first of its kind, 4-state wireless network that focuses on public safety, school districts, construction, security. So I've got a great career in servicing rural Nevada when it comes to communications. And then, of course, coaching football, and my daughters in softball have developed a sports community that travels all the way through northern Clark County. Into Pahrump. A lot of the girls out of Pahrump came in and played with our club team. Girls out of Moapa and Mesquite would play with us. So, this great history of being in the district is what I'm really focusing our campaign on. And, excited about running for rural Nevada, Congressional District 4, which is my home. So.
Yeah, and we're always trying to bridge this divide between rural and urban Nevada. And sometimes it feels like an impossible task because we're so far different from each other. It's hard to find a connection. What I love about you is you've got a foot in both worlds.
I do.
This yesterday, you're at the NRC with Ken Paxton, and 2 days before that, you're weaning calves out in the field, which is, I think, really, it's underappreciated.
Giving shots of Ivamec and giving, we take care of our cattle with, we try, it's all natural. We do a program through Superior that's VAC 45, which really means that we have quality cattle heading out to Midwest for oats and wheat or to the feedlots. So we really take care of our cattle. We got a great product. And it means a lot to be part of that 1% that feeds the 99.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the issues that we found that was so interesting. Of course, Crystal works within the agricultural water sector herself.
Farmers and ranchers.
Farmers
My
and
favorite
ranchers.
people.
Well, and that's interesting because the largest farm crop in Nevada is actually hay.
Yep.
For feedstock.
Yep.
Right. And that's sort of an interesting issue where we have cattle. They're primary meat cattle here.
Yep.
We don't do a lot of dairy cattle. And then the hay stuff, but that's actually connecting us sort of globally through
Yep.
what a lot of people, particularly in urban environments, see as
So,
sort of a backwards industry.
When you have the growing conditions that we have in Nevada with the sunlight, the water,
Mhm.
and the weather, we're able to produce a premium crop of alfalfa that can go international. It can go to Japan, or it can go East Coast, it can go south. A lot of times when there's a drought in the south, they take a lot of the hay out of Colorado, Utah, and Nevada
Mhm.
to keep those southern droughts
Yeah.
from selling off all those herds. So, that crop, once it's baled, can go anywhere because it's a lot of dry matter. And if you're in the feed industry, feeding cattle is all about dry matter.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's, powdered protein, but, close to it.
Right,
It can
right.
travel and it has a shelf life.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And right now, a lot of the Nevada stock, like I said, going to East Coast, but I guess Japan's one of our biggest markets right now.
Japan with cubes and hay, actual hay, because to produce milk, you have to have alfalfa.
Uh-huh.
A lot of, in the beef industry, we rely on a lot of supplements like citrus pulp and beet pulp and brewer's grains and things that can be used secondarily, right? There's a primary use, even like the ethanol producers with the byproduct of producing all that corn is then fed through the cattle industry. But with dairy is very specific in that they try to stay with feeds that are, from the farm, hay, alfalfa, grass, orchard grass, and they can be shipped anywhere in the world because once you bell it, it's like a packaged meal, and they can ship it off to other parts of the world.
Yeah. And I'd like to push back a little bit on the unsophistication. I can't believe the lengths that ranchers and farmers go to in Nevada to be really efficient and produce a good product. And I know for a fact there are several dairy operations that have methane domes. They're capturing the methane.
Yep.
They're almost fully automated.
Milkers.
What's the word for that?
Milkers.
The milkers. Yeah. So
The
very,
parlors
very sophisticated.
parlors are very sophisticated. A lot of the parlors have feed sources where it drops down based upon their genetics and how much they're producing. They get a meal right there in the parlor, which helps with production. So dairies are very sophisticated these days.
Yeah.
They ran very well. And, again, Nevada's a great place. Back east where when I graduated from Virginia Tech, which is part of that other, me going from Nevada, rural Nevada, to Connecticut in prep school, and then Virginia Tech, where I went to animal science, played football for Coach Beamer. But when I was there, after graduating animal science, I worked with dairies and the beef industry in the Mid-Atlantic. And the one problem they deal with that we don't have is they rely on rainwater. So think about everything's always wet. They never get to really sanitize and clean. And out here, we can control. We don't have a lot of rainwater. We don't have a lot of wash off. So out here, we're able to control the conditions a lot more. And in the end, I think your largest dairies in the country are out west because they're able to manage those. And anytime you get that many animals around, you can't take care of them because the sun's taking care of a lot of the evaporation.
Right.
So I wanted to talk about a topic that's really big right now, particularly beef and the Argentine imports that were just authorized. To me, this was Trump's way of trying to break up the BRICS countries and those alliances by giving Argentina a little bit of favor. But it seems to be hurting our cattle here, or at least that's the media perception. How big of a hit was that Argentine import?
From what I witnessed, I listened to RCAF and a different, there was a drop in the fats and feeder market, but not in the bread stock. And so there was a reaction. It was, I think, 20 or 30 cents, which is a normal reaction to a market adjustment that adding more beef. But I think there's, well, yeah, per pound, yeah, with fats and feeders. But you still have the Mexican border. There's no cattle coming in from Mexico, and I believe that the price of beef was alarming. And I saw Vivek Schwam, I can't really say his last name, but he was talking about where we as Republicans need to go with affordability.
Oh, Ramaswamy?
Yeah.
Vivek Ramaswamy?
I was just calling V. And
Fair enough.
so affordability is what we as Republicans, and the biggest part of my campaign is supporting Nevada families, and affordability, attainability is a big part of that. But I'm sure President Trump, he's a magnificent businessman. With tariffs and the way that he's working internationally, building our economy, felt like it was a good thing to reach out to Argentina. I believe that that has helped us with the MCOOL, right? Mandatory country of origin labeling. And so with here in the country as producers, we've wanted that for a long time. We want Americans that buy our beef knowing what ranch it comes from, what state it comes from, and what kind of quality they're getting underneath that plastic wrap in the supermarket. We want them to know they're getting the very best quality, and knowing that it came from a Utah, Colorado, Nevada ranch is what we've been wanting a long time. So even though we allowed some beef in, I think we're going to get that mandatory labeling that we've been wanting for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, now mandatory labeling, the country of origin really started in the late 90s, around 2000, with the mad cow disease outbreak, where European countries started really pushing it.
I think that, you got to kind of
cow devastating at that time period?
It definitely hurt the industry.
People afraid to buy beef.
Well, but that was a Great Britain problem, and the
Right.
problem that they were doing is they were feeding meat and bone meal back into the beef herd,
Right.
which in the United States we've been signing for 20 plus years, guarantees that we're not feeding. And in Nevada, all we do is range and grass. So for us, it's very easy. But in other areas of the country where they have a source of protein, they have put it into the feed source, and that's been removed long ago. But in Europe, and this is why you need to understand, one of my stories I tell is I was, after Virginia Tech, I started my MBA at East Tennessee State, and one of my good friends there was from Russia. And he told me a story about, and this is why it's so important, last night's election, understanding what socialism is. He knew that he'd been lied to his entire life the minute he walked into a grocery store in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to understand that in other parts of the country or the world, I mean, beef there is like an old dairy cow. They're reusing an old dairy cow, where that generally in the United States is going to dog food or something different. Right. We have such a great product, and so
the cow's only good at about year 2 is when you harvest it. Beyond that,
Japan, I think, is anything under 22 months of age.
Yeah,
they're very young. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to finish a beef, and once it runs on a certain age, 22 months of age. So, you work with all these different countries and what they want with the beef industry. We've always been a great beef producer for the world, and to know that story, personal story. Hey, I walked in the grocery store and know how great we have it. I mean,
Right.
Have you ever had a bad ribeye at Basque restaurant there? The Star?
No.
I never have. So
Right.
I want to go to the one in Winnemucca.
the Martin.
I would love to be there. I go and see what they have to offer, but I never miss a meal at the Star.
Well, and that's an interesting dimension, talking about the recent elections in New York and socialism. Going back at least to the late 1950s, we have the kitchen debate in Moscow. But one of the
But that's a little bit before my time.
right. No. But the story has resonance because that's one of the things that a lot of people coming from other countries tend to come because the perception is the United States, stricken by poverty, everybody eats horribly, and then they walk into an American grocery store and here's fresh produce and good meat. Like, what on earth is this?
Yep.
Right? It's a very shocking thing for a lot of A lot of people.
It's a wake up. It's an instantaneous wake up call.
Right.
That
And there's a different iteration of that. It's kind of interesting when vets come home from war.
Yeah.
A lot of them get really overwhelmed in the grocery store.
Right.
There's too many choices.
There's too many choices.
Yeah. Just
right,
kind of peel it back.
We're eating MREs.
We're so lucky. We're so lucky. You know, we have so many conveniences, and it is nice to remind people, like, this is an incredible feat. The grocery store is an incredible feat.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you know, we're having debates about that with this ongoing shutdown and SNAP and whatnot. Shutdown is hopefully over by the time this drops. But that's an interesting issue. I want to get back to, and here running for CD-4, and again, it's a district that, you know, large part rural, significant urban population. How is it campaigning across that divide?
It's very
Fun.
difficult. It's very difficult. You're used to working at a workstation in front of your PC and getting a lot of work done. And so the minute you get on the road, that ends.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had a consultant tell me, hey, you need to get a driver so you can work. And I'm like, it's not going to do it good because get out in the rules and the services are just not the same as in Clark County. Even driving to Mesquite someday. I don't know what it is, but just driving outside of Las Vegas by the speed change regions or sites or whatever, you drop phone calls every single time. So, you know, it's difficult to get out of Clark County, but for me, it's just a breath of fresh air. I drive that way. It's like that feeling going towards home. It's Tonopah, Trump. I mean, for me, I like to get out into the rules because I have so many wonderful memories of all the competition and FFA meetings, things that were created by getting out on the road. So getting throughout District 4 is special because it's near and dear to my heart. And meeting the people and the families that I've known for so long, that's what's exciting about being able to have the chance at representing the district. It's not easy. It's big. I mean, 7.5 hours from Lake Las Vegas to Smith Valley, Nevada. So, but you know, it's exciting. The thing that is shocking to me, how big the district is, and 91% of the voters are still in Clark County. 91%.
Well, that's the odd thing about Nevada. Nevada is simultaneously the most rural and the most urban state in the nation. We have the largest percentage of our population that lives in urban areas, but probably the lowest population density overall in the state.
I think that's why rural Nevada is going to be such an important part over the next 50 years in Clark County has been, look what Las Vegas has become. But we're almost to the point here where people are moving up by 15 down, you know, Laughlin, Bullhead. Look what's happened in northern Arizona. Look what's happened in southern Utah. Vegas has spawned all that. And so I'm really looking for some of that to go up into rural Nevada and hoping for the same effect. Businesses, families, jobs. So that's what's exciting about the resources that we have. I think there's a discussion to be had about, you know, everybody's so dependent on the Colorado River. You know, maybe moving some of that agriculture depends on that river to the middle, you know, out into other areas in the west where there's vast valleys and there's water resources. Leaving the river, you know, to fill up the reservoirs. You know, understanding that we do have a great climate. Obviously, Yuma is all the water they're using on the southern end of the Colorado River. All that produce, in my opinion, we can have the discussion. The alfalfa farmers, produce farmers, maybe spreading that out and working with them.
That's an interesting idea to move the farms. Now, do you envision that being BLM or conversion?
So it depends where you're at.
Because you know how much
District
you
4,
have to invest into a farmland.
Well,
right?
yeah, but but think about the amount of.
No, sorry, I was trying to tell you just to keep let go on, and we'll just pan over and just focus on you. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm
So
just getting worried.
with the opportunity, see, I see it as you know, being conservative and using the best of the resources. When you're able to, something that's being so heavily utilized and do a little bit of preservation with that Colorado River and moving those into areas of Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and just, getting a little bit more, what do they call it, right? You're able to spread it out a little bit so that you're not so dependent in one area or the other.
Sure.
And just become a little bit more diversified in the West. I think that would be a benefit to the West Coast and the development of all this food and resources. As far as the argument about BLM and federal lands, I went out to DC. I got to sit down with national cattlemen. I sat down with some different groups. Okay, where are we at with this federal land still? Where are we at with the federal land? I know Mike Lee had his bill at the Senate.
Yeah, from Utah. Right.
Amadei jumped in and got kind of slapped back, which I was grateful that he jumped in. That was kind of more around Fallon. But I think that's something that with this Western Caucus, as a congressman working with the congresswomen and men in the the Western Caucus, we can come up with a plan. And I hate to see all federal land move to the state because, like last night's election, do I trust a governor that that I disagree with so much? And so I think we need to be very careful about what we do with federal land, be strategic with it. If it's for farming, if it's for attainable housing, for affordable housing, those are things that we can discuss and come together and make a great proposal. But as far as just across the board,
right?
I've worked with the BLM for a long time. I have nothing but great working relationship with them. Do I trust them at all times? I was witness to what happened up in Bunkerville.
Right.
Well, it's
No.
fine when it comes to a lease, right? You have a BLM lease. It's a fairly easy relationship. Once you start putting infrastructure in the ground, the thing you can't own, that's where it becomes difficult. Where it's almost like you'd want to just convert the valleys, because that's where it's buildable.
Look what they're doing with all the solar right now. I hate seeing solar put all over our beautiful Nevada valley. I think we could get a whole lot more out of nuclear energy or geothermal or something that can actually produce 24/7, 365 with solar. There are limitations to solar. That's a big expense.
93's got that ginormous solar going in Elko, right?
That's right. That's right past home. And now 95 has a big solar project.
Right. We're starting to see it at the other end of 93 going up. Putting a big one.
Yeah, I liked what Elon Musk said about the Four Corners area. There's not a whole lot of population there. He said that they could build a structure there that could essentially power 3 to 4 states.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's kind of the saying, not in my backyard, right?
Right.
And right now, a lot of it's happening in Nevada. Sure don't like what I'm seeing.
Well, one of the things, and we've talked about this a bit, one of the things I'm seeing with that issue is it's becoming another extractive industry for rural Nevada. So the solar plants are going in, and that energy is actually being sold out of the state, right? And Nevada's under crunch, particularly as these AI centers going. So it's a tough thing.
I think that's where it's important that we get back to a more balance of federal elected officials. So I think the race of CD-4 is critical. Yeah. It's critical that we get, we get a senator. We need to get some more congressmen and women to represent Nevada, because right now everything's Las Vegas.
Well, and that's something else that I think that's interesting about the CD-4 race. Not only sort of the dynamics, but the issues themselves, right? So one of the things we've talked about, I'd like to hear some more of your thoughts on this, is, US 95, US 93, big feeder routes that cut across CD-4, rural areas that are increasingly primary north-south pathways to service Las Vegas. And you have a Las Vegas dominated state government and Department of Transportation that doesn't want to spend on improving.
Yeah, it's a corridor between Phoenix and Idaho right now.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't, in those rural areas, we just don't have the services to respond. Mm-hmm. Trying to get people to respond out of Clark County, they get 10 miles outside of Clark County, they start, where do they go? Mm-hmm. They kind of aren't used to dealing with the rural environment like we are. Mm-hmm. And so I just believe that somebody that understands it very well, like I do, we can get some some passing lanes, we can get some rest stops, we can get some services along these highways that will add to that we can manage this traffic a little bit more, because we want the truck traffic. That's great business for Wells and Ely and Alamo. We need that truck traffic. But we want to be able to manage it a lot better. So we need to upgrade some of our response and services, and we need to upgrade the highways. We need to and get some rest stops. Too many people are falling asleep. I mean, how many times have you been driving on these roads and you hit the da 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 da, and I'm glad that we have the rumble strips, but I think we need a lot more than that as well.
Yeah.
Clever invention.
It helps. I mean, it helps for sure.
So you were in a communications,
I am.
and so I know you want to put in more towers along that route.
So
You were like what you were saying earlier. You get a driver, but you really can't get that much more work done.
Right.
It's a 6-hour drive. I can maybe get an hour of internet in patches.
I would like to see Elon Musk come up with a rural Starlink package.
Yeah.
That would be great if we could get more Starlink into rural Nevada. I mean, I started with Global Star and Iridium, and I know all about these communication devices. Starlink is one that has really revolutionized being in the rurals. It's a phenomenal product.
It revolutionized pivot communication.
Yeah.
So now farmers can tell when a pivot breaks down. It's not necessarily an eye shot. You don't know your pivot's shut down sometimes for a while, but
And
now
I
we can
think
communicate.
as great as his product is, I think that will put pressure on the carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, into services, which will lead to better corridor communications. And that's what needs to happen. We have to have it. We need more options. Competition leads to better quality, and so we're looking for that in rural. And having that understanding, I could. That's another federal lands issue. We can take federal lands and put these communication sites along the corridors, and we can come up with some grants that allow for a construction. The solar, if it's out, if there's no power there, we can tap some of that solar. Solar's great in communications. It's very reliable. It charges up the batteries. The batteries provide power to the communication site. And so, do we do it every 20 miles? Do we do it? There's a discussion to be had there in the West, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. We need better communication so that people are inclined to head out of these urban areas. They're so used to having 24/7, 365 communications, tracking, GPS. And the more we have that in rural areas, we can kind of, bring those two worlds together.
So I guess part of the question then is, of course, and Congress is a good way to do this, because you really have to talk about vast areas and across jurisdictional boundaries. So the House and the Senate are perfectly suited for that. But you also have, I would argue, a national political culture and certainly a national bureaucracy that only sees stuff from another, right? And so even though their beef supplies and everything are coming down rural 93, if the choice comes to somebody in Las Vegas, do we add a passing lane somewhere in 93 to make more efficient transfers, or an extra exit lane to get to the football stadium? Yeah. Right, that football stadium exit lane every time. Right. Yeah. How do you balance that? How do you convince them that no, your infrastructure is actually key to a rural area?
Knowing what I know and having lived it, I got a great understanding naturally. However, but what I would like to do is just go to the elected officials, and really, as a congressman, all I can do is push forward what local elected officials want. Right. I have my own ideas,
right.
But commissioners in Nye County, commissioners in Lincoln County, commissioners, just because Elko's not in my district doesn't mean I'm not going to listen to them.
Right.
I have a great love for all of Nevada. And so, let's just say, let's take the top three important issues of every county commissioner, and hopefully some of them are the same, so that we're not doing, 13 by 3. We can kind of zero that into the top 10 and really focus on rural Nevada, those top 10 that are going to help everybody. And so I think that's the only real, and then you got to make the friendships with the surrounding elected congressmen and women as well, to make them their ideas, we can kind of work together in that, maybe we can see a lot of great things happening for CD4 and beyond, CD2 as well.
Yeah, right.
Now, Cody, I think you're a pretty awesome candidate. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. I think we should take some time talking about who you're trying to unseat.
Yeah.
And what he's doing about the job you don't like. What would Nevadans not like about what he's doing?
You know, let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
Let's start with the basics. You know, I think the big beautiful bill with no tax on sex, no tax on overtime, no tax on, you know, that was a great start for Nevada. We have such a service-related industry that applies to. He voted against it. You know, he voted against recognizing Charlie Kirk. I think that one is, you know, that's a human issue. You know, and he's voted.
What do you mean? He didn't recognize Charlie? Was there some legislative session?
Yeah, they had a vote to honor Charlie Kirk and everything that he's done. Honestly, I think Charlie Kirk was one of, in my generation, I mean, I kind of compare that to what, you know, a Martin Luther King, somebody that was so pivotal in their message.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Charlie Kirk had an unbelievable message, bringing people to get active and to God. I mean, he had an incredible effect, and for him to vote against something as simple as that, recognizing what this young man did in his time. And so I think there's just fundamental differences here. And I think it's going to take
a
Nevada.
A party line vote?
It was. Well, not really, because you have, I mean, there was other, Portsford is to the left. He's way to the left. You talk to the commissioners out in rural Nevada in the district, and he won't take meetings. You talk to people in D.C., and there's this perception of he just kind of stays out of the, he's just really not doing his job.
Kind of the Democratic MO, though.
His standard operating procedure is to point his finger at the president and tell everything that the president's doing wrong. And the president's the only one I see really working. This man is the Energizer Bunny. He goes and goes and goes and goes. And if you disagree with him, probably going to be a problem. If you agree with him, he's doing a great job.
So,
he basically, he does, Stephen Hortzford doesn't represent anything outside of North Las Vegas.
Right.
And that's a problem because that's been too much of the same for too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the district is ready for a change. They're ready for a change. I'm a Nevadan that's going to replace the old Nevadan that will not leave North Las Vegas. I plan to represent the entire district. I spoke to the Shepherd's Breakfast the other morning, had a great meeting with them. Black pastors, I was able to communicate with them. I have this history of being elbow to elbow, hand to hand with my teammates at Virginia Tech or at Connecticut and prep school. And so I just believe I'm the best candidate to represent the entire district, not Republican, the best Nevadan to represent the district. And let's stop labeling. I hate the parties labeling people and candidates. And right now, I'm the best Nevadan for the job. And that's why we're going to be able to have a great election in 26. We're going to be able to make progress in 27 and 28 and really try to get Nevada moving in the right direction. Whereas I think we've just kind of, my wife tells me all the time, the evolution of a city is when you finally get professional sports. And then you start coming down the other side. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
I want us to continue seeing this wonderful state moving into greater, pastures, greener pastures, and having, but I really do believe it has a lot to do with what's going to happen with these natural resources in the rural part of Nevada. I really do believe there's a relationship that has to be had there.
And I do think we need that football coach energy right now, just because the legislature is so close to becoming a supermajority, and we need people going, "Hey, no room for error. We gotta have a good plan. We gotta get this and go." And I really haven't seen that from a lot of other candidates. There's a lot of great candidates, and Republicans are really strong showing, but they're kind of like going with the flow at this point. You're the only one out there kind of going, we got real issues to fix.
We have things, and this is what I've
what I've, as somebody that's new to politics. And I don't even like to call it that. this is a job interview. I'm the Nevadan that wants to work for Nevada. I've learned a lot about both parties in doing this. And I've learned that both parties have their positives and their negatives. And I'm trying to reach out to everyone and saying, hey, this does take everybody's participation. Everybody needs to vote. You know, I want everybody to believe that I'm going to do the right thing when they're not watching. Right. And so that's the type of fortitude and grit that I want to bring to this race.
So you have kids, and did you wind up sending them to the public school system here, or did you go to charter?
Our children went to public school for elementary and middle school, but I did send them because of this firm belief of school choice and how it affected my life, leaving even Alamo, Nevada, which, you know, Pranica Valley has a great school system, and but is it at the level that I needed for sports and education?
Right.
I wanted to see what was available. My oldest brother that was at UPenn found a prep school, and I went to that prep school, and that led to greater things. And so for my children, I wanted that same effect. I wanted that effect of being around educators, being around students that were going to be our leaders. And so I sent them to a private school named Faith Lutheran. I was able to coach football there, and the education they received surpassed everything that we could ever have expected. My children have went to college, and they're doing fantastic. They just where they get to college and continue to excel because of the base that was created at that private school. And for, you know, part of my platform of supporting Nevada families is a big part of that is school choice, where students and parents can make that decision. And I don't think you can have school choice without a voucher system. I think you've got to be able to, you know, if you want to pack up your bag and go elsewhere, that's got to be an option.
Yeah, when I travel the state and talk to people, that's always top two issues is the school district. And especially in Clark County, got 300,000 students, and it's the 5th largest in the country, which always lends itself to a lot of bureaucratic bloat, and our performance standards are really low. I keep trying to figure out, I mean, what I figured out how to contribute to this is to offer parents opt-out forms so they can have some control over what's being taught to their kids. But ultimately, it feels like that's school district.
Moms for Liberty has definitely been a supporter of that. And, but I think it's bigger than that. I mean,
that's what I was saying. Really there should be a bigger thing I think it's the size of the district.
If you want an art school, if you want a science school, if you want a trade school, you know, I really do believe that that families, you know, my children, they were so much further along than I was because they had laptops and iPhones and things that really progressed their understanding of education a lot quicker. And so I think we're learning faster now. We may not be learning as much, but they're able to go and make that decision to go to those, you know, put a target on what they want to do and start heading there in much faster rate.
Yeah, I do like that. You start to see some of these technical high schools where kids are testing in. They can go to science or music and really specialize.
So, Cody, this has been a great conversation. Can you go ahead and give us a social media if anybody wants to get a hold of you?
Sure. So, Cody Whipple, candidate for 4th District in Nevada here. Our website is codykforcongress.com. That's the number 4. And we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have X. We're very active in the campaign right now, so we have lots of activities. We're going to have a big event coming up November 17th for Monday Night Football, which is very near to my heart. Lots of football.
Big screens.
Big screens. Raiders, Cowboys out at the Draft House, Big Dogs on Rancho, right in the heart of the district. We're having other events. We're in a parade next Tuesday in Logandale. So we're just out there trying to meet voters. We're trying to meet you where you're at and want to hear your issues. You know, I've been successful as a businessman and a rancher, a husband, and I want Nevadans to have what I had, and I'm willing to work for that. This is a great place to raise a family, a great place to have a career, and District 4 is my home. So I need your vote in June. I'm going to turn around and need your vote in November. And I appreciate your time today, Scott and Crystal. I appreciate this. Any opportunity to talk about Nevada, I enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And we'll have all the links up on our website. If you have questions for Crystal and I, go ahead and shoot us an email at info@775alive.com. Until then, I'm Scott Gaborski.
And I'm Crystal Newton.
We'll see you around the 775.